This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. All right, good morning, colleagues. Ron Miguel with the GWA team. Good morning. Today's date is May 20th, 2025. Time I have is 8:38. I will call to order the meeting and acknowledge the following members: Commissioner Sanchez, Commissioner Chaco, Commissioner Nunez, myself, Commissioner Sanchez, and appearing live and in color, Mr. Commissioner Pedro Martinez. Here, sir. Okay, all right, let's get started, Miguel. You have us working to.
Shall we go straight to the resolution?
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Chair?
don't even bother with a management report today. We'll save that for,
Right.
let's just get to the resolution.
All right, first up is Resolution 27 FY 2025. We just, a few minutes ago got off the call with bond counsel. We're still working through the documentation. The preliminary official statement is not quite ready for the package. So we can give you the overview, but we don't have the documents yet. So we'll ask that you give us a little more time to do that. We'll try to get it done before the meeting next week, Tuesday.
Just give us the highlight of the amount of money we're talking about.
Okay. So as
terms
envisioned with our 5-year plan, we put forth a capital improvement program that did require significant debt financing. We have, since that plan has been approved, trying to implement short-term alternative construction financing program, the tax-exempt commercial paper program and the line of credit. We have been trying to move that forward because of the turmoil in the financial markets. The use of those short-term instruments is not as attractive as we would have hoped. And so also given the uncertainty surrounding the continued availability of tax-exempt commercial paper, we have been advised by the NITA financial advisor as well as the members of our finance team to proceed with a bond issuance. And so this resolution authorizes the issuance of a Series 2025 bonds. We are seeking a construction fund amount of $250 million, which will mean a par, estimated par at this time of $270 million. Of course, the final numbers will depend on what happens at the market and the demand for the bonds. But this funding will be needed to address the projects in our CIP related mostly to the new regulatory requirements on PFAS, even with the stated stance on this by the EPA and the new administration. We still need to get this work going. Also, our work under the consent decree and our water loss programs, all of those programs will be funded by the bonds that we intend to issue here. So our plan is to present this for your approval in the May meeting. As I mentioned, we're putting all of the documents together, and then this would be petitioned to the Public Utilities Commission in their June meeting. I've already met with the PUC at the ALJ and the chairman just to give them a heads up that this is coming down the road. And we plan to be in the market in July.
Yeah, just steady work as always. This is part of the financial plan. I want to say somewhere in the macro plan, the big plan is somewhere in the 600 million plus, and this is the first bite of that apple. And a big portion of it is to deal with the PFAS, if I recall.
PFAS and consent decree.
Right, and the new list, right? And then capitalized interest? Are we going back to the traditional bond, or that we're now able to do it?
We are, we are not capitalizing interest on this issuance. We are seeking deferred capital payments, which will help us towards the front end with cash flow and debt service coverage. But we are not adding the additional expense of capitalized interest.
You say we defer,
Sorry, deferred principal.
So we'll only be
like
paying
interest only,
interest and won't start paying principal.
even though we draw down? Even though we're
Yes, yes. And the other thing, we are pursuing simultaneously a guaranteed investment contract to minimize the negative carry on the issue.
in this approach, we still think will be cheaper than the traditional capitalized.
Yes.
Because we're not borrowing all the money all at once.
Yes.
Okay. If the market changes, then the other tools become better available.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions, colleagues? Commissioner Martinez?
No, none.
All right. Okay. Next resolution, Miguel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next resolution is Resolution 30 FY 2025, and this is seeking your approval of the interim update to our water resources master plan. As you recall, we did our last major update to the plan in 2018 that set out a 20-year planning period, which takes us all the way to 2037. Written into that were a 3-year review and a 5-year update. And so this is the 5-year update, albeit it has taken us a little longer to get this out. It was supposed to have been issued in 2024. We're a little bit behind the ball here, but it does take into consideration the several things that have occurred with the authority since the 2018 Water Resource Master Plan was published, and that includes an assessment of our progress since 2018 and all the projects that we've been able to complete. We've updated some of the information affecting our overall planning, such as population, the new posture of the military buildup, and also new regulatory requirements that have come into play since the 2018 master plan, and that includes both on the federal side, the PFAS regulations and emerging contaminants, and then locally with the proposed adoption of regulations by Guam EPA on the dieldrin pesticide compound that was in use in prior years on Guam that we now have to deal with. It also integrates the requirements of the partial consent decree that was signed in 2024. And so with all of that, we now have updated system assessments, and we've tried to work in updates to the hydraulic model that also are required under the consent decree. So some of that work has been included. And of course, at the end of all of that analysis, there is an updated capital improvement program and strategic financial plan included in the interim water resource master plan update. So this follows the same format as the 2018 master plan. It's been issued in 3 volumes. The CIP has also been updated to reflect updated cost estimates. And so the total cost of the capital improvement program through 2037 is $1.492 billion in 2023 dollars. So this planning period, as I mentioned, the interim update does not change the planning horizon. It still goes out to 2037. The funding source for this 20-year, what's left of this 20-year master plan, based on the updated analysis, it uses our existing reserves to fund 7.3% of the entire program. Revenue bonds, about 60% of the program. Grants, 6.4%. Revenues or internally funded CIP at 23.6%. SDCs less than 1%, and interest revenues will fund 2.2% of the plan. So we have provided, I think, as an attachment, the executive summary, which gives you the general overview. As I mentioned, there are 3 volumes, and we will have that link emailed to you so that you can access the full 3-volume set in PDF for your perusal.
Colleagues, question? This doesn't require us to go out to the public, right?
No, it's just an update.
Yeah.
The next major update we intend to do is at the 10-year mark.
Okay.
So around 2028, we will be doing essentially the same thing we did in 2018, a new master plan, more intensive effort, and new public outreach on that.
Questions? All right, next. You got it.
The next resolution is 31 FY 2025, and this is seeking approval of contracts for our wastewater chemicals. I will advise the board that we hadn't fully intended to get this approved, and at around 4:45 yesterday evening, one of the awardees protested. Apparently, the award of there are multiple awardees based on the procurement, based on the bid, and so one of those awardees protested the other two. So we are sorting through that, and it's more than likely we will need to table this until July.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we have adequate inventories too?
I think we have one issue where we may not have adequate inventory for the Hagatna chemicals we need at the Hagatna wastewater treatment plant. So we're trying to see what we can do to get around that. And I will give you more, since this just came in yesterday afternoon late, I have not had a chance to speak in detail about it with legal counsel. So as I mentioned, we were on the phone with the finance team this morning. So I will have that conversation and provide the board with an update before the next meeting.
I mean, I was reading somewhat through it, Miguel. I mean, it looks like each got different contracts for different parts of the supply chains. I mean, I'm assuming they bid on everything. Is that how they did it? And you awarded it, you get this, you give it up high?
Yeah, it's based on the specific chemicals that were submitted.
Right.
Everybody can submit for everything,
Right.
but the awards are made based on the lowest bids for specific line items. And so one bidder who submitted a bid for everything didn't get everything, and I think that's what they're protesting.
Can you disclose
Who the protester is? The protester is JMI. JMI Hansen.
Have they been the longtime supplier prior to this award?
No, I mean, there's only one new player here.
Pacific Revolution?
Pacific
Who are
Revolution.
they? I'll look it up.
They have been corresponding with us about offering us products, right? And they've for years, and so they finally put together something. They went through the process. They tested their product in accordance with the specifications in the procurement, and it passed muster. And then they submitted their bid. So I don't know if that's the basis for the protest. As I said, I haven't had a chance to go through it in detail.
Who was the supplier prior to this potential award?
What are the other two? Either JMI or Total Chemical.
Duff protest too much.
JMI does protest too much, yeah.
All right.
Where are we on the procurement legislation that the GPA? We talked about this in our GPA working session and other times where we're going to submit procurement legislation changes that are going to help us, put some money where a protester's mouth is to make sure that their protests are valid, so that we can discourage
100%.
frivolous protests.
I'm a firm believer, Marianne, of you're out.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult, but don't be coming to us.
Right now, anybody can protest just
Oh,
for
yeah,
the sake of
because-
protesting.
No skin.
There's no skin in the game. We need to figure out how to.
Unfortunately, the two that we're looking at have been longtime vendors for us. Anyways, let's get.
But it's not just the GPA and GWA. This could be government-wide. It could affect the entire procurement system for Gwa, make it stronger, make it less subject to being held up in protests.
So Speaker Bloss has pulled together a smaller group
Yeah,
of
I remember you talking
public
about
and private folks. And because frankly, GPA and GWA have been very successful with very complex bids, using the GovWam piece, I've asked Tracy and Miguel to have someone participate into the part that works, right? But I totally agree that we've been asking about the need for this legislation that penalizes frivolous protests, right? Or forces them to really measure whether they want to protest or not. And And so, let's chat with John B. and Miguel, if you designate someone, or Chris, to start talking with Senator Bloss, maybe we can, between the two councils and ourselves, let's craft this legislation that we've been talking about.
Simon, if you don't mind, Chris, try to tie it into the new budget cycle. That way we can, as we say, piggyback it into the budget.
We could, but I think, as we've all observed, GovCon procurement, when it comes to protests, it's not like the federal side. You don't stop the whole federal government,
I
right?
think Commissioner.
And maybe we have to
We've
write
been
that.
talking about this a little bit too long.
So maybe we have to write that legislation.
And that, I mean, even if we're going to carve ourselves out, that's fine with me.
Yeah, 'cause I think to me, it's kind of the procurement part needs to be fixed. You've got a speaker interested.
Yes.
He needs language,
Right.
and maybe from
So,
our background,
I mean,
let's put our
Miguel,
team
maybe you
together.
can, are we possibly needing to declare an emergency? The last thing we want is, our wastewater treatment plant not being adequately doing what it's supposed to do. And we need to know that. And we've done it before with GPA, where we've run to our friends in the legislature, we need an emergency generator. And I think we can alert, our friends down there and say, hey, we have an issue that needs to be resolved, meaning procurement that will sunset, right?
I will, again, ask for a little time to review this, and I will give you an answer on that question today.
None of people removing their protest if, we say, well, there's one bidder, one stocking in our water. And we know them, so maybe we can remind them that, hey, get back to us on Tuesday, right?
Yes, sir.
All right? Thank you. Miguel. Next.
Moving on, Resolution 32 FY 2025 is seeking approval for a design services contract for the Southern Sewer Transmission Systems, and this is a professional project management and design services, essentially assisting us with the partial consent decree. The contract that we're seeking your approval for will be for the Southern wastewater collection system, with the intention of performing the work that is necessary under the partial consent decree, which includes our wastewater collection and transmission system, pump stations, force mains, with the overall goal of eliminating SSOs, as pointed out in the partial consent decree. The sites that are to be considered under this contract would be based on the priority that is necessary to meet the partial consent decree, but the locations include our facilities at the commercial port, Dairy Road, serving DOC, ejector stations in Iran, and the southern villages of Mauricio and Pneumatic, Tai, Manilao, Jotnya, Chalot, and the Pago Bay NPD pump stations. So this contract has been put out for a request for qualifications. The most qualified firms have been selected for fee submittal, scope and fee submittal and negotiation, and the engineering team has conducted that with the selected contractor here at Brown and Caldwell for the initial task orders on this IDIQ. This is the proposal that was negotiated was in the amount of 3.277 million for the assessments of pump stations and force mains that are required under the partial consent decree across all of Southern Guam. So we are seeking the approval for that initial contract funding. Again, this is a partial consent decree related project, and for the initial taskings, these the work to satisfy the compliance requirements all need to be completed by August 9th in 2031. We are using a combination of bonds, grant funds, US EPA and ARPA grant funds potentially, and system revenues and SDCs to fund the work under this contract. The firms that submitted under this RFP included 4 firms. Brown and Caldwell was selected for recommended for award out of the 4 firms that submitted. So we are seeking approval to award this contract and get moving with these consent decree design, assessment and design projects.
Questions, colleagues?
Yeah, normally, Miguel, you put the funding source, but I don't see it on this one. Is this just, cash flow or?
No,
Did I miss it?
we would use bond funds, EPA grants,
Oh,
ARPA grants if appropriate here. If some of these are tied in with ARPA funding that we have received for the medical campus in Manila,
yep, okay.
that infrastructure, if it falls under those funds could be used. And then also revenues and
Oh, it's
system
on the
development.
second page, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we are, because this is a large contract, we are using all available sources as appropriate.
Okay, so, colleagues, next, you go.
Next is Resolution 33 FY 2025, and this is the counterpart to the exact same project I just described. This one is for the northern collection system. So same justification also to serve the partial consent decree. The sites for this will be in northern Guam and include GWA wastewater facilities in Estumbo, 2 pump stations there, Jigo, Machanao, the Southern Link and Route 16 pump stations, the Harmon Pump Station in the Industrial Park, Alupang Cove, Bayside, into Muning, Barragata Mighty, and Malmong Culture Pump Stations. This firm, or on this contract, the most qualified firm was Duenas Camacho and Associates. The scope of work is very similar to the previous contract. Their proposal that as negotiated is 3.584 million for the initial taskings for this, and again, the funding sources would be the same. The same 4 firms submitted packages here, and the DCA was selected as recommended for award.
Questions, colleagues? Same format? Okay. You go next one.
Next is Resolution 34 FY 2025, and this is seeking approval for construction management and project management services for another consent decree project, the Hagåtña Main Sewer Pump Station and Redundant Force Main Construction Project. Again, this is necessary and urgent because this is one of the priority projects, pump station projects identified in the partial consent decree. We have a deadline for completing the work, which is by August 9th, 2026. This will cover the construction management services for this construction contract. The requested contract amount is 1.53 million, along with a 10% contingency. So total funding we are seeking approval for is 1.684 million. As I mentioned, there is a tight deadline for this to be completed in August of 2026, and this is funded using a combination of US EPA and ARPA grant funds. The firms that submitted proposals, there were 4 firms, and the selected firm for this is AECO.
Colleagues?
So moved. No questions.
Next, we go.
Next is Resolution 35 FY 2025, and this is for the construction contract for this same project. The same deadlines apply. It needs to be completed by August 9th of 2026. With this, we had a IFB that was put out. There was only one firm that responded, and that is A&R Pacific and Gardney Federal. It's a joint venture. So they submitted their proposal. However, it was in excess of the available funding. We are in consultation with legal counsel, have determined that because of the tight time frame, putting this out to bid again would not result. It would cause a delay, which would affect the project completion time and our ability to meet the partial consent decree. Under the procurement regulations, we do have the ability to cancel the procurement and then negotiate with the sole offerer to see where we can achieve the cost savings in order to bring the price within a reasonable amount for GWA to proceed with the project in light of the very short time frame on this. We believe that we can get this done and accomplished and start the project. We are seeking, however, because we are still negotiating with the sole bidder, we are seeking a not to exceed contract amount that is in line with their original submission, but of course we will be seeking to reduce that as much as possible to be more in line with what the engineer's estimates were on this project, and working out whatever issues there might be, whatever risk the contractor might see, and see how we might mitigate that to bring the cost down. But we are seeking a not to exceed authorized amount of 19.998 million in order to move forward with the contract negotiations and award as soon as possible.
And Miguel, are we confident it's going to be completed by August 9th? That's seems pretty tight.
2026, yeah, it is tight, but we believe it can be done.
Okay. And A&R and Garden, two separate companies with the JV. These are local companies.
A&R Pacific is a local company. Garney Federal is a nationwide company that specializes in water and wastewater. So they have done work with us before, smaller project initially. The 173 million that we received from DOD, one of the projects was the installation of the monitoring wells. The same team conducted that work and did a good job on it. They were also awarded the treatment system for 823 and 825, correct?
Yes.
So that project is ongoing. We believe they have the resources to complete a project. And
I was just talking about we go back. I'm just curious, what part of the bid was 249% higher? What component of the bid?
The bypass of the
existing force main.
Station. Guys, this is the one in again.
Yeah.
So their bid amount was significantly higher than the engineer's estimate. So I think there might be some differences in the assumptions, what the consulting engineer assumed would be an appropriate means and method for construction and how they estimated that versus what the contractor thinks it can get done given the risk associated with it. So the contractor may be extremely conservative. Those are the types of issues that we want to work out in these negotiations.
But we're okaying the 20 million for now.
You're
Giving
seeking
kind of
authorization for the top end,
Yeah,
not to exceed, with the directive that we are going to do everything we can to get the
bring
price
us that number.
down to a reasonable amount that we think is appropriate.
No, Simon, help me here. I mean, this only helps us, right? Because at some point we have to talk about it. They have got no
Yeah,
wastewater treatment
we've
plant.
pushed that.
It's beyond our years, but
Yeah, but we pushed it, but I mean, and then you got to keep again, you're going, I mean, in the meantime. So, it's sort of damned if you do,
Yeah.
damned if you don't. But, we get these lists from EPA and even they said the big Agania, after probably all of us, but maybe Miguel that they pushed that out as the last thing on the new list, right? But in terms of timeline, right? But these are the front ends and to keep Agania moving, that my assumption, that's why.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is a critical
it was
component.
9 million they thought, if bids came in at 20, but it wasn't 100,000. I mean, he expected to spend a big chunk of change, and now we get the bids.
okay.
And the full amount is going to be covered with the US EPA and ARPA grants?
That is our projection. Yeah, we'll be able to fund it with the
Even at
combination
20,
of those grants.
even at 20 million.
Yeah, so one of the EPA grants that we have, the deadline to expend it is coming up quick. And so they're amenable to us using a large portion of it for this project.
You just have to obligate it. You don't have to spend it.
No, I think we need to spend it. And it coincides with the time frame.
Oh,
for
the
this
same
project.
time frame. Okay, so not prior to.
Yeah.
Good luck on
Okay,
that.
next.
Good.
Next is Resolution 36 FY 2025, and this is seeking approval of an IDIQ project and construction construction management service contract for the island-wide sewer collection transmission system repair and rehabilitation. This is for AECOM. We, as this is also a consent decree related work. In order to complete some of the work in the compliance with the schedule in the partial CD, we negotiated task order number 2 to produce with AECOM for them to conduct assessments of our sewer main lines and pump stations for the higher priority areas island-wide. So we are seeking an amendment to task order 2 to perform some specific tasks related to the partial CD compliance, and that includes the Manila Route 10 capacity assurance design, GIGO and DEDIDO design for acute defects identified in our CCTV of the wastewater collection system, and then additional acute defects assessment and preliminary design based on the CCTV work that's been completed, and some additional structural inspections at 2 priority pump stations that are listed in the consent decree besides the Hagåtña pump station. That is the Ipao and Mamahana pump stations, which are also identified as priority projects. So we intend to amend their existing task order to take care of these priority items. The amount that we are seeking, the amendment proposal was 3.37 million. And so we're seeking to increase the already authorized maximum contract amount by an amount not to exceed 3.372 million, which would bring the total IDIQ contract maximum to 8.4 million. The projects are slated to be completed 2 years from the issuance of the task order, and we are using bonds, a combination of bonds, US EPA grants, revenues from IFCIP system development charges, and if applicable, the ARPA grants where appropriate.
Questions, colleagues?
No questions from me.
Okay, next we got
Next is resolution 37 FY 2025, and this is seeking additional funding for an existing contract we have for the structural analysis and design for the causeway leading out to the Hagåtña wastewater treatment plant. The board may recall we've seen this contract before. There, with the need for the redundant force main, there's some additional work that we would like to undertake, and a new solution we'd like to undertake with the repair of the causeway that is requiring some additional structural design and analysis. So that's the reason for this additional funding approval. The change order that we have negotiated with the designer, this is DCA. This proposal was 237,000. We did have some contingency available, so the funding amount that is required is 131 in order to effectuate that change order, and we're seeking an additional 10% contingency of 129,000 for future change orders. So with that additional funding, the total authorized amount will be 1.426 million to cover this additional work. We anticipate that the assessment and design will be completed by August, and that we will begin the construction procurement immediately upon receipt of the bid package. And we intend to use, this is a bond-funded project.
Bonds that are yet to be secured or exist?
No, I think these ones are, we may have the money for this already, right, with the bond funds?
this is existing bond funds?
From prior
Fine,
bonds.
right? Okay. Next,
Next is resolution 38 FY 2025, and this is seeking approval for design build contract for the upper Tumon warehouse renovation. the board may be familiar that we had some damage after Mawar. We have been working on getting all of that fixed. You had previously approved um, funding for this, but this is the actual contract for just the warehouse portion. The uh, project was put out to bid. We received several bids on this. The lowest bidder, responsible bidder, submitted um, a base bid of 1.54 million, and then with the additive bid, that would bring the total amount to 1.99 million. Um, we are seeking a 10% contingency on top of that to bring the total amount to 2.193 for the work, and we are anticipating that this can be completed within 360 calendar days for the base bid and a total of 435 calendar days for the base bid plus the additive bid. And we are seeking to use bond funds for this and other funding sources, including FEMA reimbursements ultimately, and then the insurance claim that we received under the GWA property insurance. So there were 3 bidders, as I mentioned, and the winning bidder on this was Canton Construction. Canton Construction.
Alex, question? What's happening with the building itself, Miguel? Are we doing any improvements to the main structure? Because I thought we had plans to.
This will include. Are you talking about the customer service center?
Yeah.
Yeah, that we are doing improvements to that, but it's not this project.
Okay.
It will be a separate
Project
project that
on
still
its
has yet to be issued.
All right. Next.
Next is Resolution 39 FY 2025, and we are seeking approval to procure. We don't have a contract yet, but just seeking to procure um, design services for deep well, variable frequency drive, and electrical upgrades. The goal of this project is to provide comprehensive engineering services for um, installing electrical improvements, including variable frequency drives at all of our operating deep well sites in order to better control and better manage production in line with our objectives of protecting the water resource. We have wells where the chloride content is trending upward, and in order to make sure we don't overpump, we need to be able to um, match the pumping rate with the conditions in the aquifer. And so this project will provide for the engineering design for those types of control systems to be implemented at all of our operating well sites. In addition, we will be looking at power conditioning equipment, including battery storage devices, inductors, capacitors to handle these temporary disruptions in power that have been affecting some of our well sites, and then also making sure we have balanced three-phase power coming into the motors to prevent motor burnout, premature motor burnout. So all of these improvements are intended under this design contract. It will have the result of improving our service reliability, improving our management of the water resource to improve water quality, and reducing hopefully our costs that we spend on motor replacements and other repairs at these deep well sites. So the project will be island-wide for all of our deep wells. We anticipate that the cost will be over $1 million for the design work, but again, scope and fee negotiations have not yet occurred. We are still in the very early stages of procurement, but because we know it's going to be over $1 million, we need to get your prior approval and then also submit it to the PUC if we're using bond funds, which is what we anticipate for this project.
Yeah, so can you explain to me how the pumps themselves impact the chloride levels? Is it the rate at which it pumps that is pulling?
Yeah.
How does that, what
So
impacts that?
when recall that a lot of these wells are very, very old. And so at the time that the pumps or the wells are installed, the permitting that is involved requires us to do a pump test to determine what the maximum flow rate could be. And that determination is made by the driller, the hydrologist, and then Guam EPA, along with recommendations from the engineering department. So these wells, each well has a different permitted pumping rate, which we uh, try to stay within that level of pumping. In certain cases, the conditions in the aquifer, whether we've put in additional wells or others may be drawing, maybe have put in additional wells, or just the amount of development has affected the way the aquifer reacts to the pumping rate. We have seen chlorides in certain subbasins of the aquifer. We have seen the level of chlorides increase, trending up. They're still within secondary treatment or secondary regulation, which is they're not the primary ones. It's not so much more a matter of taste, right, than anything else. But because of the increasing chlorides, we are worried about saltwater intrusion and upwelling within the aquifer, where we're pumping so much that we're pulling up salt water. And that's the reason for wanting to control the flow rates out of these wells. And you can't do it unless you have the proper electrical controls built in, and not all of these wells have that. With the newer ones that we have installed and the rehabilitation projects that we have done recently, those VFDs are in place, but we had a rehabilitation program which the PUC's consultants told us, we don't want you doing anything more with production until you get your water loss under control, which also does affect how much water we need to pump, but we still need to rehabilitate some of these older wells for exactly this reason, just to make sure we have the proper control set up. And so this is going to be part of that, but primarily with the electrical improvements.
Okay, so the new VFD pumps, you can control the existing ones, they're just pumping as they were originally permitted and designed, and that may be too much. It's causing that saltwater intrusion.
Yeah, we don't have it yet, but we're worried about it. This is proactive management.
Okay.
Okay.
One question, it's good that we do a lot of upgrade and a lot of planning. I just wanted to know, do our maintenance checks and service and internally, do we have any expertise to be able to upgrade some of these things, or do we have to contract everything out?
No, we have the expertise to operate and maintain these systems. It's just that
Preventive maintenance checks and services.
Yeah. Our asset management program does have preventive maintenance schedules, and they also monitor and track all the work orders, including corrective maintenance work orders. So they put those out, they coordinate with the O&M teams within each division to make sure that those work orders are issued, executed, and then closed out. So we do have that expertise in-house. We don't need to contract it out.
Yeah, what the thing, the contract is basically, are we allowed to get some of our tech services to be able to oversee some of these things, so they learn, they know the system, so that, in case it's turnover, we were able to internally move forward with our preventive maintenance. And because during the commissioning of this things is always the ones to know that we do have the tech service that we're going to be able to run with the ball.
So typically, for those type of capital improvement projects where we are getting new equipment or new processes, part of the contract is at the end with the commissioning and turnover, that training for our operational staff is part of the contract. So we include that in the bid documents.
But we do have the skills and talent internally, but we just can't go on be able to.
So for everything we're operating now, yes. For stuff that we are acquiring, in this specific example with the VFD controllers, we already have some sites where we have VFDs, so our crews and our operators know how to operate and maintain them. Our instrument technicians are very familiar with the VFDs, so There will be some training, but we already have a good knowledge base with the staff that we have.
Yeah, you're just starting to really change out. I mean, this has been a long-term problem. Better battling the power inconsistencies, they will shut down a pump. This to me comes across as a major upgrade in our ability in the pumping, the design of the pumping, the pumps themselves. You're modernizing our pumping capability because that's been a challenge as GPA has still struggled to always provide the consistent energy.
Yeah.
And then when the well goes down, then the tank goes down, and then the phone calls come and say, how come EL doesn't have any water? Yeah. GPA needs generators and he needs pumps and pipes.
We need good technicians to be able
Once they're in, but these are like the CIPs to get it in there, and then the team takes over.
All right. Anything else? Next we got.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next is Resolution 40 FY 2025, and this is seeking additional funding for the construction management services contract currently underway for the UGM number 2 reservoir construction. So this additional funding is required essentially because we had brought the CM on early for pre-construction management services, but also because we have had some extensions to the construction period based on unforeseen site conditions, additional issues we've had with the foundations and piling. And so the existing contract time will be exceeded because of these extensions to the construction time. So additional funding is required in order to keep the CM on board until project completion. So the amendment that we are seeking would increase the contract value by $560,000 and bring the total authorized funding amount to $2.26 million. The proposal that was submitted is in line with the value of the contract for the initial period. So there hasn't been a significant increase in that cost, but we are requiring additional days of their services. So we're seeking a total authorized funding amount of $2.26 million with the anticipated completion by including post-construction closeout by January 30th of 2026. As you know, this is a court order project. We have a deadline to get it done by the end of this year.
So, and it's always nice to know that we're doing a lot of things for the southern part of the island. So I'm very encouraged.
Yep, this will give us a lot more additional storage. And again, this will be covered with bond funds and IFCIP.
Next.
Next is Resolution 41 FY 2025, and this is seeking approval for the construction contract for the Malolo tank major repair. This is another court order project. It is due by the end of the calendar year. This is an existing steel tank in Malolo. The repair.
The wastewater, I'm sorry, the waste plant, or the one right off the left?
It is the one on the turn that goes towards the solid waste landfill. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes. The repairs that are necessary include floor repair, the tank shell repair, roof replacement, interior column replacement, anchor chair replacement, and then of course the coating and appurtenance work like the ladders, access ladders, vents, and access hatch, including cathodic protection. The bid proposal received by, again, this is A&R Pacific and Garney as a joint venture. Their bid proposal was $7.153 million. We've looked at that. It does exceed what we had available for the project. So we've gone through and looked at some of the items that we would be able to eliminate from the contract and perhaps perform in-house. And this, we believe we could get this down to an adjusted bid amount of $5.5 million. So we're seeking that plus a 10% contingency, which would bring the authorized funding to $6.06 million. Again, this is necessary to be completed by the end of the year. And we're at this point, because of the lateness in the game. We are looking to have the repairs substantially completed by December 31st, with final completion and all of the punch list items being done 90 calendar days after substantial completion. This will be bond funded along with IFCIP revenues as needed to complete the project.
Alex, question?
So this cathodic protection, it really does work for the corrosion, right, on the tank in the metal?
If it's properly maintained, yes.
Yeah, that's nice to know because of our corrosion factor.
Yep.
So 6 months, you're gonna get it done?
Roof replacement.
Sounds pretty ambitious.
It is ambitious, and the contractor, I think, has a good idea of what the requirements will be. Part of the reason why the cost is higher is because of that risk. I'm sure we're going to get to the end, and it's going to be a mad scramble, and we may at that point say we may not be able to make substantial completion, but we have to try.
So do we know what the definition of substantial completion is?
That-
Online.
It's gotta be online, so it's gotta be, basically be able to serve the community. Yeah. So not just like, it's done, let's start filling it up, it's gotta
No.
actually be.
Just totally wrong. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next resolution is 42 FY 2025, and this is seeking approval of a construction contract for water production treatment systems for deodorant at wells D17, Y15, and M4. This was referred to earlier at the upcoming regulations that Guam EPA is promulgating for this pesticide that was in use on Guam. We have 3 wells that are impacted, and so this contract seeks to address those 3 wells by installing granular activated carbon treatment systems at these 3 locations. So there are 3 wells that need it, but there are 2 additional wells where we have existing GAC vessels that are not in use or were in use previously for a different contaminant that we are now going to rehabilitate and use at these new well sites specifically to address the deodorant issue. And so this contract contemplates that work, which has already been designed. The work will be at well A8, which is in Route 4 in Chalapago, across from the Shell gas station. Those GAC vessels will be relocated to another well. Similarly, well F8 has on Route 28, Waisengsang Road, that has GAC system that will be relocated, and then the work for D17 in Dedido, M4 in Manila, and Y15 in Chico. Those will be 2 of those wells will receive these rehabilitated GAC vessels for the treatment system, and then at Y15 we'll be installing new GAC vessels along with some other improvements to include another power conditioner or current balancer at this site. They all include ancillary work for security fencing, as we will need to remove the existing fencing to install the facilities. So this, again, is another project that was bid on by A&R Pacific Guardian Federal, and their proposal was $7.14 million. We did find that some of their bid items were high, and it exceeded the amount that we had available. So we are taking a similar approach here with canceling the procurement and negotiating with the sole bidder as a sole source procurement in order to get the cost in line with where we think it needs to be. We will seek to get a bid price that is not to exceed 110% of the engineer of records estimate. So that would be $6.142 million with a 5% contingency of $300,000. So we're seeking authorization for a total funding amount not to exceed $6.449. million. The funding source for this is US EPA grant funding and bond funding if it's required. And
Yeah, so Miguel, the GAC systems are, the granulated, carbon, is that specific to capturing Deltran, or does it also facilitate capture of any PFAS at the same time?
so um, the GAC itself is not specific to a particular compound.
Mhm.
I think different types of GAC work well for different types of compounds. There is a coal-based activated carbon, and then there's like virgin coconut shell activated carbon that can be used. I think the coal-based one is what works well with PFAS,
Mhm.
but the others will remove it, but just not to the same level of effectiveness. But since we are not targeting specifically in these wells, the PFAS, it's more geared, what will be used is more geared towards the dieldrin. And I don't know the specific type if we know what that is yet. Is it the anthracite or is it coconut?
I don't recall. I know it was the Togon Carbon 400 spec.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a price differential between the two?
Not appreciable, no.
Okay. What is done with the spent GAC? What have we been doing with the spent GAC?
So for this is the first treatment system that we'll be putting in specifically for dieldrin. So we haven't been doing anything, but for this particular process, because we will be absorbing this, and I believe it is regulated, we will be required to dispose of it by shipping it off island, unless there is over the next few years someplace that can take it here.
But the Tumon well has a GAC system, right?
It does.
So what have we done with that spent GAC?
So the spent GAC for any of the existing treatment systems that we have in place for PFAS right now, we have been stockpiling, and we went to the other issue related to this that we have is our biosolids contain PFAS. So the sludge from the wastewater treatment plants currently contain PFAS. So we have coordinated with the Solid Waste Authority to be proactive about this and determine whether they were going to have a change in their policy based on current regulations or upcoming regulations that would affect our disposal of the sludge. And the response that we got was that regardless of what we are putting in, the consumer waste that is received at the landfill already has products and PFAS associated with it. And so they know that they currently have PFAS in their leachate, whether or not we deposit our solids that have that. And so they have no intention of ceasing our ability to dispose of the sludge, which is great because otherwise we would have a huge problem. So at this point, we still are stockpiling our GAC, but if we have the ability to mix in some of the spent granular activated carbon with the biosolids and dispose of it at the landfill, that's what we've been doing. And it's contained, and the leachate already has PFAS in it, which ultimately ends up at our wastewater treatment plant. And so in line with that, we've also had discussions with GSWA and their general manager about a joint treatment system that could be used to, if it's required when regulations kick in that would require it to be removed from the leachate, then we could work on that together.
Do it down in the zone.
Yeah.
Interesting. We had to ship ours to Washington D.C. in the dry cleaning business, and it was as much the solvent we used. It was as much to ship it off island as it was to buy the solvent. Right, so it was like you just doubled your cost, right? But we had to ship it off for years until we switched technologies. So I appreciate your headache. And even Saipem's had the challenge what to do with it. Right? If we can mix it in with solid waste, that'd be a nice solution.
In many jurisdictions in the states, the disposal method for the biosolids is they would treat it to kill all of the biologics, heat it up, but then it becomes a soil amendment, and they're spreading it on farmland. And now there are multiple lawsuits of that having been done and farmland being contaminated. And so now there's a whole different issue, and particularly in the Northeast, I think, of the U.S., where that has become an issue. So we've never had that problem. We have not allowed any of our biosolids to be land applied, even for a pilot project that composting pilot project that Guam EPA was promoting. We allowed them to take samples, and then we allowed them to use a little bit in the pilot project, but only if it was applied at a location that was not above the aquifer. And so, you know, we have been disposing of it ultimately, I think the way everybody else is going to have to dispose of their biosolids.
Okay.
Other than that, not much going on at GWA. Kind of a sleepy little
So did
company.
we add up the total spend?
Yeah, I know, this is,
Tracking like one.
did you exceed your
$1.8
$1 billion
billion.
Washington place?
So just under 2 billion when you include the master plan?
It's a big number.
I mean, I'm just curious, Tully, can you run us a figure by Tuesday and tell us how much we're approving here? Because it's beyond my statutory authority.
Just remember, the planning numbers are just planning numbers. They may change.
And then we've got.
Is it close to the Gulf One budget? Because our money's real though, right?
We know how to manage our money. But it's a big number. The list is always big. I mean, the first list was 600. We needed to borrow 660.
Would help in some of this.
They are, but they're not going to pay for everything.
That's what the ARPA and the.
That's all the grants are for. Yeah, but we don't fund it all. We got to
The
borrow.
good news is that we're going to spend it unlike our other departments and agencies that failed to meet the deadline.
So like the first consent decree almost cost us about $1 billion, but he and his predecessors got about a third of it in grants. So EPA spanks you, then hands you money, right? Although my next question to you is, with all the ruckus in Washington D.C., with what's he call it, the beautiful budget, where are we exposed? I mean, I'm hearing horror stories in other places about federally funded assistance now getting cut. I was waiting for this meeting to ask you, how does it look for, because you're still mentioning sources of funding coming from US EPA, but have you been advised? And Senator Lujan has said you and John have been sending in the what ifs, right? But I was just, if you could brief us, how's it looking?
So in April, we attended the water policy conference, and the head of the Office of Groundwater and Drinking Water, who was a Trump cabinet level appointment who had not yet been confirmed, her and her counterparts or associates at that conference did commit that fiscal year 2025 funding would be issued as expected. So shortly thereafter, the estimate from our grants coordinator came in at between 30 and 40 million, which we would receive. But for 2025 funding, we receive it at the end of the fiscal year. So the 26 numbers, there's no guarantee. We don't know if we're going to get that. And if they don't issue or authorize the funding that was proposed under the bipartisan infrastructure law, then we will lose about 26 million or so, I think, or up to 30 million. But just even the state revolving fund program, our regular grants, which used to be 8 million a year, and then went to about 4 million a year because of congressional set-asides or earmarks. Even that funding, I think, in the Trump's proposed budget was slashed. So we have no assurance that for 26 we'll get the same level of funding that we have in years past.
That's the current bill that was passed.
It hasn't passed yet.
No, it's just creeping through.
It's
the one he calls the
going to the
beautiful.
House,
It's the one he calls the
It's in the
beautiful,
House.
beautiful bill. Right.
So we did receive it immediately from the congressman's office with, a request if we have any concerns to let them know. The team and I went through everything and the feedback that was provided. We put into tabular form to identify the programs that are of concern to us. EPA was one of them. There was also Bureau of Reclamation funding that we were hoping to get to help us with a new intake structure and dam for the Ugum surface water treatment plant. We've already got technical assistance grant funding in place, and they are building a hydraulic model so that we have the basis, their basis, because it's their people that are doing it, that show, yes, there is an issue here, and for resiliency and drought protection, you would need to upgrade, and these are the hard improvements that we recommend, and then we would use that to apply for their funding to help us do it. That is in jeopardy now, so we've put that concern before the congressman. And then the last one, it's not funding we received directly, but if we recall, we signed the One Guam Water Resource Information Program MOA with UOG and USGS, and the Department of Defense has their counterpart agreement. But USGS's funding for their regional water science centers supports their efforts in that program, which helps us to manage the aquifer, the resources. And so if their funding goes away, then it will impact that MOA and our ability to get good scientific information to help us manage the resource, like the chlorides and the turning down the wells and reducing our production rates. That's all based on information and advice that we get from WERI and USGS. So that type of expertise is at jeopardy. So we also put that into our comments and send it back to both the senator's office and the congressman's office.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that we get a lot of CapEx money from US EPA, which is great, right? When you hear about Guam, they talk about possible loss of federal jobs that are funded by federal money. On the GWA side, are we okay in terms of jobs? I mean, we may get whacked on the CIP side because who knows, right? But do we have any exposure with federally funded jobs that are at risk?
I don't believe so. I think we have a couple positions, 4 engineering positions that are grant funded, but those funds are in place.
Nobody's applied for.
Yeah. And we haven't yet filled them.
We'll see what happens, right? What else can we do?
Right. And the only other thing about the budget that I would mention is I don't think we're out of the woods with the possible elimination of tax exempt municipal bonds, right? If they remove that exemption as a way to pay for what they're proposing in the budget bill, then we would be impacted significantly. But so would all other jurisdictions. I think there's a lot of pressure, but we just don't know. And the latest intel that we have from the investment bankers and the finance folks is there should be some more clarity on that about the time that we are out in the market. So June, July timeframe.
But isn't that like in 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
We're in the market in July. Yeah.
But they
We're
would
going to a ratings presentation.
Oh, that presentation, you won't have the information.
Nobody
we
will.
might, but they said summer, June, July timeframe. And I think that I don't know if it'll be there by the time we are before the rating agencies.
But it might be there by the time we're in the
market.
But again, they have to pass the legislation killing it.
Right.
And if there's an effective date of X, we would all know, okay, when the hell is that?
So
my guess is we're going to sneak, our hope is to sneak this one in before whatever the heck's going to happen is going to happen. Right?
Okay.
And I think that's all you can do. Right? Stay the course.
You have a couple more. Why don't you go ahead and update us on our friends at the airport authority?
So I have discussed with airport management the outstanding amounts and the status of the operating agreement and the need to get that issue resolved. And I gave them the guidance that I was given, which is, you guys need to take care of this within a month at the time that I met with them. And in our discussions, just based on all the outstanding issues related to the operating agreement, we kind of concurred that more time was necessary. And I informed them that in order to get more time, I think that the way to do it would be for them to just resolve the outstanding accounts payable. I reminded them that we had gone around multiple times with their purported disputed billings. And our engineering team from permits has gone out to look at the connections that they are in question. Our customer service department has gone through all of the records and the correspondence, and we did make adjustments, as many adjustments as we could justify, to adjust the billings that they had in dispute. And everything that was left, our position was this is firm and final, and there are no more adjustments that are justified. And I suggested that they make a good faith deposit by covering half of that outstanding amount and work out a payment plan for the balance, which we would be open to working with them to achieve, and that a request needs to be made to the CCU to allow more time to work out the issues remaining on the operating agreement. And that was where I left it in my meeting with them. And they have since come back and they have made the 50% good faith payment. They have made the request for additional time. But as of yesterday, they did not work out the remaining balance and a payment plan for that. They are still disputing the billings for one problematic facility.
What about keeping current? Are they're going to keep current, or these are
Like, they have been keeping current. It's just the outstanding amounts.
What do they owe you now?
130,000 in arrears.
They have money at the airport.
130,000. My 50% of that has been paid.
Yeah.
Or that is
No.
the remaining balance.
It was 260.
Okay.
So 130. What's their monthly bill?
It's like about 20K.
Just for all of their facilities?
Yeah.
So is that 2 years of contested?
Oh,
It was right.
much longer than that.
Yeah. But in dollar value, well, then Maria has to pay in 45 days. They've had two years of disputed waters.
Yeah. Well, you're making progress. Just get them on the payment plan for the 130.
That's what we said. So if they do, by the meeting, we'll know what to put in the resolution. If they don't, we'll know what to put in the resolution.
Tell them your meow's getting pissed off.
Unfortunately, colleagues, at the insistence of Miguel, I did contact the chairman. And I said, please, just get your management to recognize that this has gone on too long. Miguel asked for more time in the operating agreement. I said, yeah, 30 days. Force the issue on them.
Yep.
And I explained to him, we're at risk because we're exposing ourselves on a system that we don't own, right? And I said, I'm not going to get into the details of that, but I recognize what's going on here. We need an operating agreement.
And you need to pay your bill.
And in addition to that, and even in the hands of management, like we always do, and just make them aware that we are fully aware of what's going on, and let it be known that Tamarind and San Jose have to pay. Like they're supposed to, like everybody else, and we will hold them to task on that. But more importantly, get the agreement going, Miguel.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because we're not, like you said, it's not our water system. Therefore, they can find somebody that wants to operate for them. We'll be happy to do that. Yeah.
Tell them
At the end of the day,
the board wants it by Tuesday.
right?
I don't want to wait 22 more years to get the receivable collected.
Yes, sir.
Or the agreement.
Payment plans. All right. Anyway,
Do we have a session?
no, we don't.
No, apologize.
I'm sorry.
We will have one for the
Regular meeting?
regular meeting, just updates.
Okay, it's on that.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Commissioner Martinez.
I'm sorry, Leroy, yes.
Yes, no, I agree with Miguel, and I think on the balance that we should really just collect the whole. I mean, we have good justification with our billing, and so it's in the records. And I don't know about doing a negotiation whether this is right or this is wrong, but I would think that that would be our best approach. Let's get the total balance paid up and move forward with that. The other thing I wanted to bring up, Miguel, if you could, because we have so much resolution for our next board meeting, can you just, many of them are funded by the bond. Can you just give us a total amount that's going to be used for the bond money coming out of these resolution? Okay?
Yes, sir.
That's it?
That's it.
Peter Roy, you know where the bodies are hidden at the airport. Why Can you give us some advantage, negotiating advantage?
Okay. All right, then. Adjourn, colleagues. Okay, see you Thursday. Thank you. Thank you, yellow team.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Francis, I mean, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'll be doing it.